Hello, my name is Rene Bonvanie. I'm an executive in residence at Battery, where I advise the firm's portfolio companies on developing scalable and efficient go-to-market strategies that draws upon my many years of operational experience, where most recently, as the founding CMO of Palo Networks, I spent 11 years on building what is now the largest company in cybersecurity. It is my deep pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker, Jeff Yoshimura, who is CMO and Customer Experience Officer at Snyk. Jeff leads the community, marketing, and customer success organizations at Snyk. Prior, he was at Elastic, where he built and led global marketing for more than 5 years, from the company's early open source roots to its IPO and beyond. And very especially, I've had the personal pleasure of working with Jeff over 13 years ago, dating back to our time working together on Salesforce's App Exchange. We look forward to your questions using the Q&A tab in the app, and we'll answer them at the end of Jeff's presentation. So with that, Jeff, please take it away.
Thank you, Rene. Thank you, Battery Ventures. It's a pleasure to be here today. As we all know, we work in a privileged industry that is reinventing itself constantly. I'd like to take everyone back to 1999, and if you recall the years, there was no such thing as CRM, there was no digital marketing, there was no such thing as marketing automation, SEO, or even PLG. Marketing was all about events. It was about trade shows, print ads, and PR. If you were a sales rep or an SDR, I don't think the word SDR even existed at the time. It was about cold calling from the yellow pages or using the infamous book of lists. In 1999, I remember the aha moment of setting up Salesforce.com for the very first time. And 10 years later, I remember the moment of using Marketo to run email marketing campaigns. Today, our marketing aha moments are all built around data and insights, and this is being fueled by demand and growth. Those are the essential elements to building a great software company. Imagine this car is your company. As you can see, it's incomplete. There's no tires, there's no windows, there's no engine, there's no interior. In this phase of your company, you're building your initial team and you're collecting feedback about your idea. Over the years and over some time, you start to build an MVP of your product. Maybe you've reached product market fit, and hopefully you've acquired an initial set of early adopter customers. As you continue to build out this product, more and more users and more customers start to use your product. This leads to more feedback, more product and more features, and more customers. But while this is all great, the question looms: how do you supercharge your company? Well, the answer is demand and growth. If you think about your company like an electric vehicle, demand is the engine that allows your company to keep running. Without it, things will stop. Growth is based on the insights and the data streaming from your product. It gives you intelligence, and without it, you can't iterate, you can't learn, and you can't grow. Let's talk about demand. Recently, I've had the opportunity to lead marketing at Elastic from 20 million to about $500 million in revenue. When I started at Elastic, there was no such thing as product-led growth. Everything was about the demand funnel. We had a massive open source community where we curated demand from. We worked on marketing campaigns and tactics to drive product downloads. And eventually we launched a cloud where we focused on getting users to adopt our cloud and sign up for a cloud trial. One of the most commonly questions I get is, what is the role of community in curating demand? In 2015, Elastic's open source community was about 20 million users around the globe. 3 years later, in 2018, at the time of our IPO, it was about 100,000 users across hundreds of countries. Community was everything to Elastic. It gave us a beachhead to work with fast-growing startups and early adopter tech companies like Yelp, Netflix, and Uber. It also gave us a competitive moat within large enterprises. Our founders, our creators, and our employees were deeply engaged in community. In fact, ELK, or Elasticsearch, Logsearch, and Kibana, was so popular that many thought that ELK was the name of our company. Some of the best practices that we learned from this experience building community is one, don't underfund this team. Hire a leader, hire technical and developer advocates, hire a community manager. Two, leverage the community team to enter into new markets. Instead of investing in sales and marketing resources, first, hire a DevRel person to seed the market. Three, run dev workshops within enterprises, as developers who sit within these large enterprises yield lots of influence on technology decisions. Most open source projects start with downloads. To us at Elastic, a download was a signal of demand. It was a signal of intent. We marketed getting started with Elasticsearch everywhere. In 2015, we had approximately 30 million cumulative downloads, and 3 years later, this number ballooned to 350 million. Some of the best practices that we applied when it came to downloads is to make sure that we don't create friction. Remove all friction. Make it as easy as possible for users to get started. No email, no registration. Two, turn on telemetry data and turn it on by default, and explain to users why this is important for getting product feedback, for understanding usage so that we can continue to iterate and improve our products. Three, capture user intelligence wherever you can, website, clicks, referral traffic, and use this data to personalize your website and your marketing campaigns. At some point, you have to build a managed cloud service, especially today, that strips out all the complexity and makes it easy for users to use your software. After acquiring a startup that had a hosted version of Elasticsearch, we built a cloud business from nearly scratch to over $100 million over 5 years. Today, I think this business is more than 30% of Elastic's total revenues. And when you think about cloud trials and you compare that to what PLG is today, they're very similar. It's clicks to get users to sign up. It's in-product documentation and tutorials. And it's all about self-service and really automating the process of getting users to move through this funnel as fast as possible. Some of the best practices that we learned at Elastic were that cross-functional team synergy is a must. Building a successful cloud business requires product, engineering, marketing, sales, and G&A all working closely together. Two, using data, and specifically data coming off of your website, but also data from within the product to personalize experiences, run A/B tests, and to create demand campaigns. And finally, integrate cloud into your GTM motions. If you start with an on-premise, self-managed deployment model, integrate cloud into the GTM, whether it's in your training, in your user groups, within community, your SC org, as well as across marketing. Now let's turn to growth. Snyk is a product-led growth company. This is one of our big innovations in the security industry. The security industry is traditionally top-down, and at Snyk, we lead with product-led growth. We have a SaaS platform. We call it our Developer Security Platform. And we allow for users and independent teams to sign up and get started for free. Millions of developers and more than 1,200 customers use Snyk every day to find and fix vulnerabilities within their software. There are 3 components to our growth funnel: acquisition, activation, and monetization. Briefly, I'll talk about each of them. Acquisition is about finding users. At Snyk, it's developers and AppSec teams. If you're Figma, it's designers. If you're Asana, it's project teams. I think we'd all agree that paying for users is not probably the best use of spend. So at Snyk, we apply best practices around leveraging the ecosystem. We've built more than 100 pre-built integrations into dev tools, into CI/CDs, IDEs, code repos, and container registries. We've also built first-party integrations and prioritize integration within large ecosystems such as Docker, Atlassian, AWS, and Hashi, knowing that those are where our users are, and that if we can make those users successful, it's going to lead to more users. And we've also worked on adding features, such as features that you see commonly in tools like Miro or Asana, where you have in-product invitations and you can invite team members and you can try premium features, and building that within the product. Activation. We follow the rule of 20, as Dharmesh said in his opening remarks, but activation is the process of getting users who signed up to activate. The team responsible for activation is really focused on nurturing this user experience and making sure that every user has a great experience when they start to use the product. They think about what happens after a user signs up, what happens within the first hour, within the first 1 day, within the next 7 days. Their goal is to minimize as many onboarding steps as possible and to optimize that flow so that users can get value from the product as fast as possible. Some of the things that we've applied at Snyk is we built a PLG team. It's a cross-functional team across product, engineering, and growth marketing. And we're constantly iterating on growth loops. There's a growth loop for activation and looking at these different ecosystems. So one ecosystem might be the growth loop for Docker users. Another one would be for Atlassian, and another one for AWS. And they're constantly tweaking and experimenting ways to improve that user experience. Another thing that is important is utilizing tools such as Segment, Amplitude, Iterly to look at patterns and to get product insights about user behavior. So understanding what users do once they're inside the product, what are they clicking on? What are they bouncing on? What do they do after click A to click B? And is that the desired behavior that we want from our users in the product? The last thing that we focus on is monetization. And monetization is the act and the process of converting free users into being paid users. And there's lots of things to consider when it comes to monetization. First is your pricing transparent? Second, are you leveraging everything you can to capture users where they are? So in product promotions. What is the self-service pricing flexibility that you have within your product to allow for users to self-select? And the ability to add and expand usage over time is also an important self-service capability. When you think about these different funnels, it's really important to look at the differences, but also the commonalities. In the traditional marketing funnel here, you have a user that downloads software or you fill out a form. The goal is to get users to opt in and to fill out that form. And then you run through that traditional process of MQL, SQL. There's usually sales reps and SDRs involved in this process. And it ultimately leads to pipeline and someone converting into being a customer. In the cloud world, it's about optimizing for the cloud trial and getting users to activate and evaluate premium features and ultimately sign up for the product before that trial expires. And in the PLG world, it's about optimizing for value fast and getting users as fast as possible to utilize your product and activate and try premium features so that they move from free to paid. These are some of the metrics that you can track under each of these funnels. And at the end of the day, what's really, really important is to make sure that your systems and your products and your people are optimized to look at these and report on these on a weekly, monthly, and a quarterly basis. Let's talk about PLG to CLG. As CMO of Snyk, I often get the question, why do you own customer success? What is customer success as it relates to marketing? Well, if you look at this table here, the first 3 steps are about PLG, or product-led growth. It's getting users to sign up for your product. The last 3, or the last 2, are all about customer-led growth, leading to net retention, leading to expansion, leading to future growth. And if you think about the digital experience today, customers that go through this digital onboarding process and sign up process through product-led growth, they expect that customer experience to also be digital. So at Snyk, what we're building is a digital customer success team to be able to automate this process all the way from the initial sign up all the way through onboarding and expansion. So we call this CLG at Snyk. And if you haven't heard this term yet, I'm pleased to say that this may be the first time that the audience hears the word PLG to CLG. You heard it here on Battery Ventures OpenCloud event. In conclusion, let's get back to your company. At this point in time, you've automated everything you need to do about demand and growth. You've instrumented your systems, you've instrumented your products. You have the metrics and the tracking that you need. At this point, you are now supercharged to take your company to the next level. You're supercharged to take your company through growth, through an IPO. And in order to do this, you need both demand and you need growth. And with that, I'd like to conclude and say thank you for your time today. And Rene, back to you.
Thank you, Jeff. And I got to tell you that this revolution, right, is just phenomenal. And I really liked that I was there when you introduced the PLG to CLG phenomenon, because that's kind of a marketer's dream, right? When it comes to graduating your customers from being passive and marketed to, right, to active and marketed with. So phenomenal. Jeff, one question that always has been on my mind as someone who has spent a lot of time in software, and who grew up, of course, in the more traditional software and top-down motion, but also did a lot of work in trial software. What is your opinion about the functionality that you have to offer folks when they evaluate? Do you give them everything? Do you give them a substrate? I think you have strong opinions about it, and I keep hearing in the portfolio questions from folks that say, well, what should I expose my real product, right, my full product, right, to these folks, and they get all the benefit? What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, well, I think transparency is best, and developers, specifically technical practitioners, they want to actually get their hands on features that they can use right away. So I advocate that there's no need to hide features. You should really be promoting and advocating for how users can be successful with feature A, B, or C, but also be very transparent of where do these features sit. Are they fitting in the free lane? Do they fit in the tier 1, which is your first level paid tier, or is it in your enterprise tier? And letting customers try and use these features as quickly as possible. So on the engineering and R&D side, making it as easy as possible for users to consume and try those. And then on the marketing side, making sure that you run campaigns and you have the data to really leverage and to understand how to market those features to those customers. But I think transparency, going all in, is best.
Well, and speaking about that, when does the transparency become creepy? I guess we're looking over our customers' shoulders all the time, right? And I'm nudging them all the time. right? What are some of your best practice when it comes to frequency of intervention, right, in the product, or the amount of information you provide to them, right, while they are looking and evaluating the product?
Yeah, so I think that that's important. So if you're in the cloud world, you have a a 14-day free trial, or maybe it's a 30-day free trial, and you can kind of A/B test and optimize that.
Mhm.
I think if you are being creepy in a cloud trial process means that you are automatically sending that lead to a sales rep or to an SDR,
Yeah,
and that user may not yet be ready to engage with somebody in that trial process. So I think the things to think about is what are the things that you can automate in terms of the welcome email, that first touch email, that second email. We've seen studies go where initially we had 9 emails go out in a 14-day trial period, and then we found that it's better to have 7 emails. So you have
mhm,
the welcome email, and then you have kind of emails go out based on usage and based on where you see users maybe getting stuck. So if somebody's
yeah,
getting stuck at this onboarding phase, well, you have an email that goes out or something within the product that triggers them to really kind of get help on setting up their system and either
yeah,
adding data or integrating to another third party software within the product. So
yeah,
that's kind of on the cloud side of things. I think in the PLG side of thing, what's really important is letting users just kind of go wild, and you have your free software and just start using it. And
yeah,
in our world at Snyk, it's like you can scan and fix up to 200 vulnerabilities in a month, and we're tracking all the telemetry data on the back end, and we know when users are hitting their limits. And in those cases, I think users are, it's transparent that you get X amount of
right,
scans or X amount of of the ability to find and fix vulnerabilities. So you can then start to really notify them around, hey, did you know that if you get to this level, you can actually get more benefit, and here's some additional features, such as are you working on a team together, are you is this a
yep,
project
yep,
within a company, are you an open source project, or are you
yep,
working with this coding language, and really using that data to then not have creepy experiences, but very kind of rich, valuable
yep,
experiences that lead customers to ultimately be successful and just want to
yep,
engage with you. So I
yeah.
think creepiness is an important word, and in the world of data that we all live in, it should not go underestimated.
I thank you. Yeah, um, that's super insightful, Jeff, and uh, I completely agree with you. Let's go to step zero, right? Getting folks to download the or to kind of engage, right, to begin with, right? So, what are some of the today's best methods, right, to get folks engaged to begin with, right? What do developers look at, right, that makes them uh, act, right, upon a call to action?
Yeah, so I think A is when it comes to downloading or activating your software,
Yeah.
how easy it is for them to authenticate and connect. So, did they have to fill out a form, or can they just sign up with their Git?
Mm,
Can they sign up with their Docker Hub login? So, making it really frictionless at that first point of entry, I think is absolutely important. And then secondly, other tactics I think really revolve around how do you give users value. So making sure that
mm,
they are very well educated in terms of when they do download or when they do get started, here's what they're going to get, and here's what
yeah.
it solves. So in the world of Snyk, it's solving how do you find and fix vulnerabilities in your code, or how do you find and fix vulnerability in your Terraform or in your container environment.
Yep.
At Elastic, it was more about use cases and solutions.
Yep.
So
Yep.
if you're building a search app, right, how do you get started really simply with a few clicks, and start to index data and to really kind of build your structure around search? Or in the
Yep.
logging use case, it was about the ease of integrating, and really kind of munging your data into Elasticsearch so you can start to analyze your logs. So
Yep.
I think being very um, transparent about what the user gets is really
Yep.
important, and you can feel kind of marketing around kind of those experiences around use cases, and really
Yep.
just driving value.
Awesome. Speaking of Elastic, I was one of those folks who always called it elk right before. And I should have known, right? As a Dutch company, right? I should have known, at least, right? Semi-Dutch company. It was, but here's, and I get this question asked a lot, right? Which is, okay, I have the pleasure of having a large following in open source, right? With my technology, right? Now, what are best practices then, and how should I even measure myself getting an open source, right, a community member, right, to try the paid for product, right? What are some of the things that you learned at Elastic, right, that can help portfolio companies and entrepreneurs and marketers, right, to really benefit from that open source community approach, right, but then transform those into paid users.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think is really important is to find community champions that are
Yeah,
non-employees. So if you can
yeah,
go find users out there that are really excited and passionate about that technology, but they also see the value for them within their organization, but also within their community. So let's say it's
mm,
somebody who is in the Los Angeles area or somebody within the Netherlands.
yeah,
They are interested because they want to find people like them that are interested in common topics,
yeah,
and they want to do it because it improves not only the software, but it improves kind of just how companies operate if they can all band together and talk about ideas on how
yeah,
they're using a certain type of open source technology to solve a specific problem. And ultimately, I think that leads to then those users and more users being able to convert into subscriptions and paid features because
yeah,
we all know that open source is part of mission critical systems. So because it's part of a mission critical system, it's okay to start it off as a project within a company, but as it gets into production at scale, you're going to need a different set of features, and people understand that open
yeah,
source and really the commercialization of open source is really just a natural evolution in the usage of that software within that enterprise.
yeah. Well said. And then as a follow-on, right, you showed those three funnels next to each other, right, from traditional to trial to PLG. Um, what and you had a measurement framework there as well. Um, what are some of the conversion rates, right, where you go, hey, this is good, right, or where you go, this is not good, right? I'm worried, right? And what advice can you give to the folks, right, that are watching, right, about what is acceptable, what is good, right, what is best in class?
Yeah, so I think the rule of 20 applies here. So I know that there was a conversation about the rule of 20 from Dharmesh's presentation this
Yep,
morning, and those
yep,
are rules that we look at is that conversion rate and that conversion rate from kind of the free user that signs up to
hmm,
convert into the paid user. So we're
yep,
looking at kind of that specific kind of measurement. I mean, we
yep,
set targets and we're constantly iterating on this. So you can imagine like an activation team focused on a growth loop. And let's say that the target is 25%,
mm,
and we're at 22%. So we're going to look at how do we increment and build experiments to drive a higher conversion rate to either paid, or maybe it's even a higher conversion rate from that initial uptake. So
yep,
I think your metrics really differ based on kind of stage and maturity of your company as well. So in the very early stages, you're not going to have the same degree of metrics that you have when
no,
you're $100 million plus business. So what I think is important to look at is always looking at the funnel kind of completely. So looking at, okay, how many downloads are we getting, how many website visitors are we getting, what's that conversion rate we're seeing from people moving from
yep,
kind of anonymous to opt in. Then in the traditional funnel, kind of looking at, okay, website visitors to MQLs, down to sales accepted leads, because then you're now measuring the quality of the pipeline through that entire funnel. And then ultimately, you're measuring kind of how that is now attaching to now customers, customer ARR.
yep,
So really attribution, I think, is key. Is
yep,
is when you think about marketing today, it is not just one touch. So there could be
mm,
10 to 20 to 50 different
yep,
campaigns within any given user or customer. So really just thinking about the funnel all the way from here, but then also looking at the funnel as it expands. So this is that
yep,
CLG world where you
yep,
acquire, and then all of a sudden now you want to eventually expand. So how can
yep,
you now start to widen that funnel where if they start off with one product, Now you're looking at, okay, what's my attach rate on 2 products, on 3 products?
Yep.
How are we growing users? So we start with 10 users. Are we adding another 10 users? Are we getting to 100 users?
Yep.
So really looking at kind of the funnel starting wide, it
Yep.
narrows because then you get the
Yep.
people that sign up and start to use, and it
Yep.
widens again.
Yep. Awesome. We have one more minute, Jeff. Just in 30 seconds, are there any tools that you use other than Excel, right, to do the job here?
Oh my goodness, we use a ton of tools. We have Amplitude, we have Italy, we're using Segment. We're experimenting with a software around predictive scoring called Mataku. Um, I've used Clearbit, Zoom Info,
Wow.
Sixth Sense. I think data science is really interesting,
Yeah.
and a data analytics team is important. So in this new world of PLG and CLG,
Yep.
really kind of building the foundation of an operation and an analytics team,
Yep.
where you have like data scientists and data analysts, because you're just grabbing so much data that you need to know how to store the data and structure that data, and then you need to know how to utilize that data. So the old
Exactly.
world of
Yep.
when you and I started doing marketing was like, okay, all this data is in Salesforce and it's great, I can just
Yeah.
click on this tab here and get everything.
Yeah.
That's not
No.
the case anymore. I find myself more often, using other tools in order to kind of see patterns
Yep.
of data. And now there's awesome tools like Slack, where you can
Yep.
actually integrate feeds into saying, okay, hey, there's a new lead here, and then you can see everything that happened against that lead, or against that new kind
Exactly.
of PLG
Yep.
user. So
Yep.
a lot of great tools out there, a lot of innovation, but I think it comes down to hiring the right team that can really be optimized to utilize those tools.
Perfect. And thank you so much, Jeff. And with that, folks, thank you for attending this part of today's event. And I look forward to seeing a lot more of you in the future and talking about super interesting topics presented by super interesting people like Jeff. So, Jeff, thanks again,
Thank you,
and
Rene.
enjoy
Thank you,
the rest.
everybody.